Alrighty. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the CHP podcast. My name is Ariana Scalfo. I'm your host as usual, and I'm here today with Clay Foster. Um, we've been following Clay, and Clay has been in like the CHP ecosystem for quite some time now. I think you did the Crucible the first year it happened, right? First
Uh,
or second?
I think it might have been second because I think Alec won the first year, yeah, and it was
Mm-hmm.
the second year after that. I can't remember who won.
Yeah.
Maybe
And you
Sam.
did awesome.
Yeah.
And then you won this year, which was even more awesome. So congratulations on that. And Clay, you've been coaching hybrid athletics. You've been doing the hybrid athletics thing. You've done a 100 miler. Clearly, you lift quite a bit because your super total was massive. You've done things like the Hybricon Games. I met you there, not last year, but the year before, because I'm trying to remember what year it is. So yeah, basically you've just been in the hybrid space for a while. So I'm excited to have you on and just talk about who you are, what you do, and kind of how you have used the hybrid space for yourself and like how you ended up here. So welcome.
Totally, yeah. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. Like you said, I've feel like I've known a lot of you in like the CHP just like ecosystem for a long time, so it's cool to
Yeah.
like sit down and really connect.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm stoked. So introduce me to yourself, maybe by describing how you ended up as the guy who runs 100 milers and then also wants to squat really heavy and lift really heavy. You can
Totally.
start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like most people, I fell in love with this like at an early age, and it was more for vanity reasons. I was like obsessed with bodybuilding. I had myself convinced in like eighth grade I was going to be a professional bodybuilder. Obviously, that didn't pan out, and I'm nowhere even close to that. But I fell in love with training at a pretty young age, and then from there, it kind of evolved in a maybe not so dissimilar way that I feel like a lot of people kind of go through. I was into the bodybuilding thing for a long time, caught the CrossFit bug in maybe 2012, 2013, something like that. And so I ran with that for a while. And I think that was my first true kind of introduction to maybe combining some of these, different modalities, which I think it probably was for a lot of people, right? And so, from there, it just kind of progressed. I didn't love some of the things that you find in traditional, CrossFit programming. And, you just start seeing these cool events pop up and like, oh man, that would be really cool to do. But I cannot like, for whatever reason, you become attached to like these performance markers or strength or the way you look or whatever, for
Yeah.
better or worse, it just happens. And so it's like, man, I think it'd be really cool to like maybe go out and do like a marathon or an ultra marathon or whatever it might be. But like I cannot bring myself to like get super skinny or like lose my squat or not be able to squat 405 like on any given day. And so you just kind of is just a gradual evolution over time. And I think I picked up the first time I picked up the copy of like the hybrid athlete, Alex's book. I was racking my brain about this the other day. I think it was 2018 maybe
Okay.
is when I grabbed that. And so that was when I signed up for the Baton Memorial Death March. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Yeah.
Yes, I am. That's hardcore, man.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And so that was my kind of introduction into like true endurance training. I'd never done anything over like a 10K before then. And I was in the
Yeah.
light division. So I was just going to be basically, running a marathon, kind of through the desert. So it's trail run ish, I would say. And so I used a lot of the principles there to try and kind of, balance things, and it worked. And I was like, oh shit, this is like pretty wild. Like this is really
I can
cool.
do
And
this.
then from there, you just like, it keeps growing and you try to find the next big thing. You're kind of always chasing that dragon. So,
That's awesome. I mean, Baton Death March, if you couldn't tell by the name, to those of you who are not familiar with it, it's a marathon distance in the middle of the desert.
yeah, White
Uh,
Sands, New Mexico.
yeah, which means
Mhm.
it's at altitude too, right? Because I don't think there's any New Mexico that's not.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, maybe like 3 or 4 thousand feet. Like it's definitely above sea level for sure. I just don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's not sea level.
Mhm.
It's in like sand most of the way. And
Yep.
then you can also do it as a ruck. You can do it as a light or a heavy, right?
Mhm.
Is there a super heavy or just a heavy?
I don't think so. They've got like some divisions for people who are like doing it in uniform, and
Okay.
like who are like you have to wear boots and stuff like that. and then I
Mhm.
think they've maybe got a different division where it's just the ruck, and then they've got like the light or the slick version. I can't remember what they call it, but you're essentially just running the course without any weights,
Mhm.
just marathon distance.
Yeah. You were in the military, am I correct?
Yeah, so I was in the Air Force for 4 years, 2014 to 2018. And so I'm originally from like small Midwest town in Indiana, and I was stationed up in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And then once I separated, we moved down to Colorado. And so I've been here in Colorado since 2018, which has also kind of been a catalyst for a lot of these, bigger events and stuff, just because
Yeah.
it's kind of all around you.
Yeah, I was gonna say the outdoor
Mhm.
big endurance event scene. I mean, even small events, they're just constant, so it's really easy to get inspired because they're
Mhm.
also super accessible to you. So it's a perfect place to be.
Exactly.
Wyoming too, that's badass. So, going into your hybrid adventures, obviously you started with the Baton Death March. What's kind of your personal like rubric for choosing an event? Like what excites you? Is it the fact that you can't do it or the fact that you could do it? Is it that it intimidates you or that it excites you? Like what kind of when you're looking around for the next thing, like you said, when you're chasing the dragon,
Mhm.
um, what really makes you excited? And kind of when you're choosing these goals, how do you address the other half of the equation, right? Like obviously you're looking to stay strong, you're looking to stay physically fit looking,
Yeah.
being muscular.
Right, right.
So, and clearly this goes both ways, right? Like if you're going to pick a strength goal, what do you do with your endurance? Like what do you put it in park? Do you keep it in maintenance? Kind of how do you approach selecting your events? Because you've really done such a wide variety at this point. I would
Mhm.
just be curious, especially since we're heading into the new year. Lots of people are picking new goals, picking new things. Kind of how do you approach it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few different things. So as far as just like picking an event that I like want to put on the calendar, um, I think part of it is just like impulsiveness on my end. Like, if I'm being honest, and
It's
like I'm
fair.
sure like it drives my wife crazy or whatever, but it's like I see something and I'm like, I think I want to do this, and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. And so like I'll just sign up right then. And
Yeah.
so it's bitten me in the ass a few times for sure. But for the most part, I think it's worked out pretty good. And so with that, um, it's more of a visceral feeling, I guess. If anything, it's just like you see something, you're like, man, that looks like really cool. I'd love to, check it off my bucket list or whatever. And then also, I think you alluded to it earlier, and it's exactly right. Like it has to have a certain element of feeling maybe a little out of reach, a little scary as far as for like the big events. I mean, that's what makes it big, right? If you knew you could just come in and crush it right away, it's like it's not that big of a deal. It's not even really on your radar. And so having that like kind of scare factor or whatever, where there's a possibility you could absolutely like not see the thing all the way through. That's a big portion of it. As far as balancing it, the way I've approached it, and this maybe is contrary to like what I would even tell people or like what is good advice, but a lot of times for some of these things, I feel like if you can get to a certain point with like your baseline level of like endurance and strength and stuff like that, it's so much easier to just kind of like crank things up for a few months and go at it and maintain whatever else you're not necessarily focusing on. And so I've traditionally done pretty short preps for a lot of this stuff, and doing that with the understanding that I'm not coming in trying to win this Ironman. Like I'm not trying to win this 100 miler. It's more something I just want to do and have the experience. So I'm okay with maybe not performing at my absolute best. If I would have trained up for this for a year or something like that, then a 12-month prep, I could have absolutely ran faster. But with that comes the more time, energy, and stuff like that you have to devote to it. And then it just I think it becomes a little draining. Then maybe it loses some of the allure unless it's something you've had your eyes on for forever, and this is like the culmination of what you've wanted to do your entire life. Then I could maybe see putting a longer prep into it. But I think having that shorter prep lends itself to being able to maintain things at least a little bit better just because you're not stretching it out as far. And then with that, because I'm coming into it with the mindset, and I don't want to give off the wrong message, like I'm purposely trying to sandbag things. Like when I go out there, like I'm working hard, but like I said, just having the understanding that I know I'm not going to win this thing. Like, I'm not going to be podiuming for this like 100 miler or whatever. And so, yeah, I feel like that kind of lends itself to maybe being able to balance things a little bit more. Um, Hopefully that
Yeah.
answers.
And coming into it with realistic expectations
Totally.
and knowing yourself well enough
Mm-hmm.
to know that, like, if you started to train to podium for that 100 or hit a certain specific time goal
Mm-hmm.
that was maybe considered more difficult or less common for that
Mm-hmm.
particular race or distance,
Mm-hmm.
um, you'd be spending a longer time training not the way you like to,
Mm-hmm.
or spending a longer time investing in this polar goal. Like, there's two poles, the strength and endurance, and you'd be really, really, really just spending a ton of time focusing on this one pole, and that's maybe just not it's not your jam. I think some people really love the swing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they really do love the swing back and forth. I think for some athletes, I think it's actually worse because they lose strength
Totally.
every time and then
Yeah.
they lose endurance every time. But they enjoy the extremes. So, like, are you going to tell them that they can't train the way that they want to? I don't know. But I think the way that you're approaching it is really brilliant because, like you said, you've just got this fantastic base of
Mm-hmm.
strength and base of endurance. And then you can just swing a little bit in the direction that you need, prep super hard for something. So you're
Mm-hmm.
working your ass off, but you're also not spending so long in like this far left quadrant that you inevitably start to lose something on the other side. Especially, I think it's less common when you're like maintaining even marathon distance running
Mm-hmm.
with strength, because I feel like 40 to 50 miles a week is a lot, but you can still eat enough.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get past the 40 to 50 mile mark, it's really hard to eat enough. It's almost impossible. So the
Mm-hmm.
longer you spend running
Totally.
weeks over 60 miles or at the 60-mile mark and then trying to stay yoked, it's like it's really hard. Not impossible, but it's
Right.
really hard.
Totally.
What has been your favorite strength event that you've done so far? And it could have been like a hybrid, both event too, whatever, but kind of like, what's your favorite type of strength thing that you've done?
So, so I just did like a local competition. It was last weekend, and
Okay.
I mean, it was basically a strongman competition. And so
Hmm.
I done the same thing the year before, and I really enjoyed it then. But for whatever reason, the events this year were just like super cool,
Yeah.
and I like really dug it. I was super into it. I was like, man, this like strongman stuff is actually really fun. It's got that like component of athleticism, and like you have to be able to move and like kind of be able to, I don't know, be like kind of quick on your feet and adapt and stuff like that. And then
Yeah.
also it's like you're lifting like a lot of weight in these
It's
implements and
not
stuff.
light.
And it's, yeah, and it's cool too because a lot of these things coming into it not having like a traditional like strongman background or even spending a lot of time with any of the implements other than like maybe a sandbag or something. It's cool to just kind of be able to like show up and see the transfer of, more or less traditional barbell like strength and conditioning type stuff and how that can actually, I mean, obviously specificity is important, but I think it's maybe undersold how much just like being strong with a barbell can really carry over into these other things if you have a certain level of athleticism and you can kind of figure things out as you go. And so I,
Yeah.
I honestly think, yeah, this thing I did last week was awesome. It was a ton of fun.
That's really cool. I'm actually training for a strongman event on February 22nd.
Oh, sweet. Do you know
Um,
the events?
I do. There's
Okay.
a press medley, which is like log, sandbag, a box, and a
Oh,
circus dumbbell.
cool.
Um, and of course, like me being me, the novice weights are just too light.
Mhm.
So I signed up for a middleweight, but those weights are really heavy. So I'm like,
Hell yeah.
shit.
It's all right.
There's
You'll
like a
never
max.
regret going too heavy with it. You'd
Yeah,
regret
yeah, whatever. If
pushing
I
it
fail it, I fail
extremely
it.
hard.
Like,
Yeah.
whatever.
Mhm.
Frame deadlift or frame carry, and then a max deadlift, and then I think there's a AMRAP stone,
Oh, cool.
um,
Like loading to a platform?
loading over a yoke, like
Oh, okay. Cool.
stone over. Um, so that was interesting. I learned how to do a log press 2 days ago.
Ooh.
Um, and like you said, like just being familiar with clean and jerks and
Mhm.
how to use a barbell. Like sure, with the log, the center of gravity is super different, like super far back. Um, but the movement's the same. Like
Mhm.
when he describes rolling it up your chest, I was like, oh, I understand that. Like it's
Mhm.
not a barbell, it's different enough that I'm gonna need to practice this if I want to lift more than, a certain amount over my head.
Right.
But at the same time, it was fun.
Yeah.
Really fun. Like I
Yeah.
think you pick up on it pretty fast. So yeah, I agree. I think just having a general like super accessible one barbell, just
Mhm.
any amount of literacy with moving that thing
Yep.
through space, it transfers so easily. Kettlebell,
Mhm.
sandbag, it's similar, not the same,
Right.
but it's similar enough. That's why I think CrossFit, that was also my gateway drug,
Mhm.
was so cool for a lot of people, and is it introduced people to a ton of different sports and a ton of different things. And I like now that there are a bunch of other options for people to hop out of the CrossFit space and still
Mhm.
have access to that mixed bag.
Yeah.
Um, no, that's really awesome. I love that for you. I think strongman's really fun. I'm
It's
probably
super
never
fun.
going to be very good at it, but like
Neither. I'm too small. Yeah.
I'm tall and I'm skinny,
Mhm.
so like I would have to put on so much muscle because my range of motion's so far.
Mhm.
Like I would have to get really strong. I think
Which sounds
yeah,
fun.
yeah. I would like to. I'm going to, but I probably won't be that good at it, which is fine.
That's right.
I'll just be the fast one, right? You're just gonna
Exactly. Yeah.
be the fast
Until
one.
you have to like carry things a few different times back and forth, and then everyone else is gassed, and you're dusted people. So
You're like, I could do this all day.
exactly.
Um, on the endurance side, what's
Mhm.
been your favorite? I don't even want to say race because there are so many, but maybe favorite format.
Um, so I did an Ironman, and I thought that was really cool, just for like the novelty's sake, and maybe even from like a confidence building kind of standpoint. Just
Hmm.
because like swimming has never really been my thing. Like I've
Yeah.
spent a ton of time in the pool, especially when I was in the military. I thought I wanted to maybe like try and like do the special forces thing, and it's like, man, this pool is like kicking my ass. Like I don't think I'm gonna be able to do
Swimming is
this.
hard.
And so like I spent a bunch of time in the pool, and it's just like for whatever reason, I'm sure I mean, I know I'm just like really inefficient. I should probably take lessons or whatever, but we never got to that point. And so, being able to, I mean, I showed up that morning, was just like worried about the swim. Like, I was like, man,
Hmm.
I hope like I don't like get cut on like the swim, the first event of the day or whatever. And I came out and like I smoked it. I was passing people like left and right. Like I got in the water and everything felt great. So I think in that regard, it was like I said, just from a confidence kind of building standpoint and just like novelty, I guess
Hmm.
that was really cool. And then, the 100 miler I did a couple years ago was
Yeah.
just like it's just a wild experience. Like if you've done like, ultra marathon distances, like you understand what I'm saying. It's a completely different thing. And you just have this wild roller coaster of emotions because you're just going for such a long amount of time. And so it's a I guess in a way it's another confidence building thing too, because you look back on it and you're like, okay, like if I could keep moving for that long, like I'll be able to get through this, whatever it is. And so
Hmm.
I think that was probably my true like favorite, but the Iron Man was cool in like a different way.
Yeah. I feel like Ironmans are like there's just this. I don't want to say cachet, but like it's an Iron Man.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it's an Iron Man, and
People know what
like
it is. Yeah.
yeah, and the
Mhm.
race is really well put together most of the
Yeah.
time. It's just an experience, but it feels like, at least to me, the difference between an Ironman and an ultra is like if you doing an Ironman is kind of like pushing yourself, but in business class,
Hmm.
and then doing an ultra marathon is pushing yourself, but in coach
Yeah.
or maybe Spirit Airlines.
Yeah. No, I like that. That's a
It's like bring
cool way
your
to
own
put it.
snacks.
Yep.
You
Yep.
got to bring your own bag.
Right. Yeah, there's like no one like transporting your shit for you or whatever. Like, yeah,
Mhm. There's
it's
nowhere to
very
like,
different in that regard.
yeah, yeah, hang your bike, like little transition zones. Like,
Mhm.
no, it's like you got to camp.
Exactly. And even like the people you see there, it's
Mhm.
also like it's a different kind of vibe for sure.
Yeah. There's, um, I always say like no one's more intimidating than an intermediate like or age group podium Ironman athlete
Hmm.
because they work so hard.
Hmm.
They work so hard. Like they're super super competitive, um, and they're just intimidating people because they're just like locked in, and it's I don't know. They're just there's this intensity, and
Hmm.
then you go to an ultra, and like literally, unless David Goggins is there, most people will literally sit down until the start buzzer.
Yeah, exactly. And like people wearing sandals and all kinds of wild stuff. Like it's
There's people in
people are crazy. Yeah,
costume.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like people will like talk about where they just pooped off the side of the
Yeah.
trail. Like it's just different.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
It's different. Um, Still equally competitive, but just the people that do it, and obviously they still work super hard, but there's just kind of this like, yeah,
Hmm.
I'm stoked to be here, man. Like
Yeah,
it's 2 in the
exactly.
morning.
And I think some of that lends itself to just like maybe like time domain too. Yeah, just like
Yeah.
because of how long it is, maybe you're not able to push quite as hard. You know, you don't have to be quite as focused. There's room for a little
Hmm.
bit more error and kind of not quite as like you said, like tunnel vision, blinders on. So yeah, it's cool though. Both are cool in their own right for sure.
Yeah. I think staying in the zone for 11 to 12 hours for like an Ironman race just
Mhm.
sounds so exhausting.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, what? But then, doing it for 20, 24, 30 hours,
Hmm.
like 200 milers blow my mind.
Oh,
Just
I
kidding.
can't even comprehend. It doesn't make sense to me. You like think about maybe like the jump from like a 10K to like a half marathon, like just because the absolute, like, even though relatively it's just double, so it's the
Hmm.
same there, but like the absolute mileage difference is just like bananas. It makes absolutely no sense. I
Yeah.
can't comprehend how people do it. So,
Hmm. Yeah. And the type of people that do them are crazy. Like, I
of
worked with
course.
one athlete, super talented woman. She loved the 200-mile distance, but she started working with me because she's like, yeah, I've been doing really well. I've been winning a lot of races, but I vomit the whole time. And I'm like, you're having a good time and vomiting the whole time?
Yeah, I think if I had that experience once, I'd be done.
Right. Like, I would write that up. I'd be like,
Yeah.
this is not for me. And she's like,
Never.
yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, if there's a way I could do this and not throw up. And I'm like, yeah, let's find that for you.
And
Because
imagine where the limit is once you can not be vomiting the entire time.
So she set I think it was course PR on a trail, a 200-mile race, but like up in Michigan or Minnesota in the middle of
Interesting.
the winter. It was
Cool.
like 2 degrees overnight. Um, Gnarly, absolutely gnarly. And like every picture of her, she's probably thinking, I'm not throwing up. This is great.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah, for real. I'm sure the relative like experience of it all was much more pleasant.
I'm sure.
Mhm.
Um, All right, and then on the crazy hybrid side, like the combo competitions that you've done,
Mhm.
um, do you find the like multi-day format like Hybricon to be more fun or more challenging, or do you think it introduces just as many? I don't want to say like limiters, but like does it make it less fun because you're kind of like forced to pick and choose which events you do well at almost, or is that part of the fun?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, like we all have our own biases and things we like would like to see and not like to see. And so like
Hmm.
especially if you're coming into something like Hypercom where you don't necessarily know what you're signing up for at the
Hmm.
beginning, it can be like it can either be like you see the program and you're like, oh yeah, this is awesome, this is like exactly what I wanted, or it can be
Yeah.
the opposite direction, right? And you're like, oh man, like I'm not as stoked about this now. And so I
Hmm.
think a lot of it depends on programming, right? But I do think part of the fun is like you said, having that knowing you're not going to do as well as some things, but then like being able to like put the hammer down and like really show up on like the stuff you can do well at. I think
Yeah.
it's cool. And then for the most part, most people that are there are probably doing something similar to an extent, unless you've just got like an absolute stud there who's just like running it away with it all, which
Yeah.
happens. And
There are some studs. It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. I mean, there's some incredible athletes for sure.
Mhm.
It's cool. And another good thing about those is like showing up, and especially for whatever reason, like you show up to these things and you feel like you want to be more competitive in it because it's like it's kind of what you do.
Mhm.
And so you're coming into it, at least for me, I'm coming into those things with a different mindset than I am like the 100 mile or whatever. It's like, no, this is something like I want to do well at. This is like kind of what I train for. This is like who I say I am. You know what I mean? And so
Mhm.
you're a little bit more intense with it. And so when you're getting like dusted by someone else, or you end up not doing as well as what you wanted to, it's always a good reminder that like there's work to still be
Mhm.
done. You're not the biggest fish out there. So
Yeah, I find them like, at least personally, equally inspiring
mhm,
and crushing.
mhm.
Like there's
Yeah.
always a period after them where I'm like the most stoked about getting fitter
Mhm.
and also completely discouraged, like completely crushed.
Yeah, no, I can absolutely relate to that sentiment.
Yeah, equal measure.
Yeah.
Like beat up, mad, whatever it is, but then also like, wow, that person was awesome. And like, I think I could be like that. Like,
Right.
okay, well, I'll just train harder. But then I'm like so burnt out. I'm like, I just need a minute. Like,
Chill.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are tough because you're, like you said, you're a victim of the bias of the person doing the programming.
Mhm.
Um, like this year was so much swimming. And
Yeah.
I learned how to swim like 2 months before it. So
Which is pretty cool though. That makes for a cool story. Like you're coming
for
into
sure,
that knowing you're not going to crush the swimming stuff, but the fact that like you're able to go in there and hold your own and not drown or whatever, like I
I
think that
did not
that makes
drown.
for a cool
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, and it was beautiful. It was swimming in the
Mhm.
ocean in Catalina Island, like,
Yeah,
it was
right.
absolutely gorgeous. If there's one place to completely suck at something, it's totally there.
Yeah.
Um, and, but it definitely, like, while I was in those swim events, watching myself get laughed by people, or watching people do it, I was just like, "I really wanna get better at swimming." Like, I'm
Mhm.
probably not gonna be that good because I don't really wanna spend that much time on it.
Exactly.
It's not my favorite thing to do, but the way they were able to control their breathing
Mhm.
and work that hard was super cool to me.
Right.
Like, I'm not good at swimming, so as soon as I got in the water, I was like, I'm panicking. I can't breathe. I'm gonna drown. And I had to just focus on breathing. That's like all I could think about.
Right.
Not swimming fast, not going harder, not competing, but literally just like, okay, arm, breathe. Arm. Like you can't be competitive when you're trying to remember to breathe. But
Right.
then watching these
Trying to
other
make sure it's
athletes,
yeah.
mhm, yeah, like there's you just can't. Like you can't.
Mhm.
Once you're in that headspace of survive, like I think being competitive is kind of like out of the picture. But watching the athletes come out of the water running,
Mhm.
immediately picking up a weight, and then immediately running back into the water, I was like, that's pretty badass.
Mhm.
That's really cool. I want to do that. Like maybe once. Like, so-
Yeah, for sure. No, totally. And I think there's something different. Like you see like the CrossFit games or whatever else it is on TV, and it's like one thing, you're like, oh wow, that's like really wild. Or you see someone post something on Instagram and you're like, oh yeah, and then you kind of forget about it or whatever.
Good
And
for
you
them.
end up yeah, exactly. And then you like build up these kind of like almost like limitations in your own head of what you think is possible. And so I think it's good to like for whatever being in person and just like seeing those like walls broken down of what you
Yeah.
think is like possible, and it being a reminder like, oh okay, like maybe I can get at least a little bit better here, like looking at the
Mhm,
distance between us right now. So I think it's yeah, it's that's one of the best things I think about competing is it just opens your eyes a little
mhm. And I think how many times we, like you said, we subconsciously limit ourselves, but we
bit.
also judge other people.
Mhm.
Like you're like, oh, look at their body. Like they're not a whatever. They're not an endurance athlete. They're not an X. They're not a Y. And then watching them completely destroy the swim event, and you're just like, okay, my bad. Like
Mhm. Excuse
I
me.
you didn't look like a swimmer to me, but you just won this or like came
Mhm.
close to it. Like
Mhm.
never mind. And that makes you think about yourself and be like, I've just been standing in front of a mirror going, well, I've never been swimming and I don't look like a swimmer and blah blah blah. And then
Mhm.
you just meet someone who's like, yeah, I was a lifeguard and I'm swim instructor and blah blah blah. And I also deadlift close to 400 pounds. And you're like, okay, maybe I've just been
Yeah.
a little bitch about this.
Yeah,
Like,
you messed up my world and, like, all the things I've been telling myself.
yeah, I was comfy in here
Mhm.
with my blinders on. Yeah,
True.
no, I think there's a, a lot of value to it, even if it's
Mhm.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I always urge people to go do those events because I'm like, look, you're probably gonna like my friend Lizzie did the Hybricon with me. She's 115 pounds. The strongman event was a
Mhm.
farmer's carry of
Mhm.
115 pounds per hand.
Oh, Jesus.
I think she walked into that event weighing 109 because she won the run the day before. Um, she still tried, and she's like, I feel so demoralized. I feel so like I think the yoke was almost 400 pounds. Like she weighs 110 pounds probably, but she did it, and every single person was like, "Holy shit, girl, you just did that!" Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it took you it took you a really long time, and you hated every second, but like she did it. It was awesome.
Mhm.
And every time she'd be like, "I don't want to do this event. It's not. I'm not going to be good at it. I don't want to do it." And then she'd do it, and she'd be like, "I could be good at this."
Yeah.
And you're like, "I know. It's it's contagious."
Totally. Yeah, and like I said, just seeing those other people or whatever. And then a lot of times you don't realize what you're it's another good thing about competition is it's pretty cool to see like how much you don't want to rely on this, but a lot of times you can rise to the occasion in certain things and end up,
Hmm.
doing way better than what you thought was ever possible or even than what you'd ever done in training. And
Yeah.
it can kind of just bring it out of you. And so I think it's another, like I said, reason I think people should get out and
Mm,
at least
I
try.
agree. Yeah, Pete Nelson and I on the last podcast were talking about this, like how important it is to train alongside
Mhm.
somebody. So at least sometimes,
Mhm.
like lift with a partner or lift with a group,
Mhm.
or run with a group, like just for the extra little bit of push.
Mhm.
Because if you're always training by yourself, it can be really easy to neglect that little top end.
Yep, 100%.
Even if you're a super fantastic athlete and you're able to access it, sometimes it is difficult mentally to hit that every single time you train on your own.
Mhm.
But when you're with other people, especially in a competitive environment,
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
you just kind of are like, screw it, I'm going balls to the wall right now. And then you do so well and you're like, oops,
Where did this come from? Yeah.
oops,
Yeah.
oopsies.
And I mean, like, even just like as far as training alone, because I did that for I have been doing that for the longest time. I've got a home gym or whatever, and like I was just slaving away in the basement, and I just you inevitably like you just I don't know. It's in your head. Like no one's really watching you in the gym, so don't take this the wrong way. If you're like worried about like or self conscious or anything, no one gives a shit about you in the gym. No one's paying attention. But like
Nobody.
in your head, you think that, and so even if you're not necessarily training with someone, being in an environment where there are other people around, I think that can have a similar effect, maybe to a lesser extent, but it can certainly. I feel it at least with me. I think it kind of makes me push harder just because this weird subconscious thing where you think people are like counting your reps or like watching how long it took you to do something or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, that's why we have a home gym, but
Mhm.
especially coming back from being postpartum, I had to go to a gym. I
Yeah,
had like I had to get out of the house.
totally.
Um, but B, I was so tired all the time. I still am, the extra
That's funny.
push of being like, all right, if I want to look a certain way, I have to act a certain way. I have to train a certain way.
Mhm.
And I don't want to. But if I put myself in a situation where I'm standing in front of a mirror, I'm a little less likely to like just sandbag or skip my accessories because then I'm like looking at my tricep and I'm like, okay, there she is. Okay, cool. Okay, maybe this is working. Maybe I'm doing a good job. When
Yeah.
you're at home by yourself, sometimes especially like mirrors can be positives and negatives, but for me personally, I consider them a positive because I'm always just like, okay, cool. Look at me do the thing. I look like I know what I'm doing.
Hmm.
I should be stronger. Okay, I'm gonna keep doing this. I'm gonna keep working. I
Right.
don't know how many times I've chosen to do accessory work because I'm like, is my butt bigger? and then I go do more like, kickbacks or
Push
something.
a little more blood in there and see. Yeah.
Right, yeah, I'm like, should I need to make sure. I need to make
Yeah.
sure that this stay um, obviously for some people this can be a huge negative if you're
Right.
dealing with like body dysmorphia or similar, but for me at least
Mhm.
personally, I'm always like, I didn't think I looked like that.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, just like you said, the act of getting out of your house and making the effort to drive somewhere, even if it's like a short drive, and just
Mhm.
being there, and you're like, well, shit, I'm here now. Like I'm gonna just do the thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Versus
Mhm.
when it's pros and cons of training at home. When you're at home, it's so easy to just be like, yeah, that's pretty good. Like I think I'll just like go upstairs now and do whatever else I have to do. It's been on my mind or whatever. So
Mhm. I call it trapping yourself in your car.
yeah.
That's what I do. I just
Mhm.
trap myself. I'm like, all right, I'm sitting in here. I'm gonna go to the gym, and then on the way home from the gym, I'm like, I really just want to go take a shower and go to bed. But I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm in my car and I am driving myself to where I'm gonna run.
Mhm.
And I am a victim of my own my,
Yeah.
my own intrinsic motivation at this point. I am a captive. And then when I get out of my car, I have to run because now I'm here.
Exactly. Yeah, and you're not going to show up somewhere and not do it. So,
Yeah, like I'm not gonna be that person that gets out of my car. I've done it once or twice, but that's in
mm,
like 8 years.
yeah,
Um, I have done it though. I got out of my car, grabbed my running shoes, put them back in my car, got back in my car, and went
all right.
home.
That's all right. A couple times out of 8 years, I think you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. So looking forward, obviously you just did a strongman comp.
Hmm.
Do you have anything else lined up this year, especially on the endurance side, or are you just kind of chilling? What do you have this year?
Yeah, so I kind of made a conscious decision to not do anything like super endurance focused this year. I feel like the last few years, because so even this past year I signed up for, it was a mountain bike and run. They
Ooh,
call
cool.
it the Grand Traverse. So it's
Hmm.
and there's three parts to it. There's a cross country ski too, but I don't know how to ski yet, so we're working on that. But I think that'd be cool to do all three. But it's a you run from Crested Butte to Aspen, then you bike back the next day from Aspen to Crested Butte. So it ends up being somewhere around like I think like 40-ish miles with some like decent elevation gain, and that was like my introduction into mountain biking, which I ended up loving. But I caught like a weird little injury towards the end of prep and just decided to pull the plug on it because I didn't want to like I think I maybe could have faked my way through it, but it just didn't seem worth it. I figured I'd live to fight another day. But I've had these kind of ultra endurance type events on the calendar. It seems like for the last 3, 4, 5 years or whatever, and it's just like okay, I want to just like take a year and not have anything like that. And so I got into rally, which I'm super stoked about.
That's
Yeah.
gonna be so fun.
Are
Okay.
you going to be there? Are you?
I am not in it, but I'm gonna try to be there whether I'm competing or not. So
Cool.
I'm gonna try to judge if I'm not.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about that and to just kind of like you said this whole hybrid training thing, right? You've got these polar ends. And so I'm excited to like be able to spend time like right in the middle where I need
Yeah.
to be and
Hmm.
like push hard for this. So I think that's really my like true focus. I've got a couple of smaller events that I'm not really going to do a whole lot of prep for. They've got a cool triathlon. It's right here in Fort Collins. That's where I'm at, and so it's cool though because it's short. I don't even know like what the distance would be called for this, but it's like an 800-meter swim, and then it's a mountain bike and a trail run
Oh, sweet.
instead of a road bike and like a road run. So
Mhm.
it'll be cool, and it's like the trails it's on is where I do like all my training anyways. So it'll just
Yeah.
be like an easy like a cool little thing to go do.
Hmm.
But other than that, I don't have anything planned necessarily like as far as events go. Just some like other outdoor type stuff I want to maybe try and check off this year. But
Yeah. I think that's really smart. Just give yourself a year to just
mhm.
recalibrate, see what you're
Yeah,
like, see what you're doing, and like see what's working for you and push a little bit. Because I mean, your lifts were all excellent in the Crucible, so I'm excited to see kind of like how you build on those and how you push that. Because I think your CrossFit background is going to be super useful going into rally.
totally. Yeah, it'd be cool if they. I would like to see. I think it'd be neat. I know. I think they maybe had some like cleans or something like that last year. But I
Yeah.
think it'd be fun if he like threw in like a little more, some of the like technical stuff, or even some more like gymnastic type stuff, even just like one event or something like that, I think it'd be
or
really
something. Like
cool. Yeah.
he usually does the top 8 and then top 4. So
Hmm.
hopefully he keeps the mountain bike.
Oh, that'd be sick. Yeah.
There may also, I don't know if he's doing this or not, but he mentioned it. There may also be a firearm
Oh,
event.
yeah. No, he confirmed it. So
Okay,
I think it's I can't remember if it's run, swim, shoot, or swim, run, shoot, but
sweet.
it's like a 500-meter swim, I think a mile run, and then you've got, I can't remember how many rounds you've got to like put on target, and then you run back. So there's two running sections. I think they're a mile apiece, and then it's a 500-meter swim. So
That's pretty sweet. That's like a
yeah, it's
sprint,
really
like
cool.
the best kind, because then you have to calm way down.
Right.
Cool.
Hmm.
That's cool. I like that. I really like the way that Matt programs. Like
Oh, I had so much FOMO last year. I was like watching it unfold, and I'm like, why am I not
the
there?
FOMO, right?
This sucks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Matt does a really good job. I really like his programming style. He like,
Cool.
I think he nails the having fun part
Yep.
of
Yep.
being a hybrid athlete.
And like
Gets it.
just enough novelty to things to where it's cool, and like it's challenging people in new ways and making people do things they've maybe never done before, but not so much to the point where it just feels kind of like gimmicky almost, or just like silly, like, okay, what are we doing here? I think, yeah,
Yeah,
he's struck like a really good balance on that programming. I thought last year looked like a ton of fun.
awesome. I'm stoked you're going to be there.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So
Mhm.
that's August.
Yes, I think it's last weekend of August, and
Okay,
so it'll like carry over into Labor Day. Yeah, that's
perfect.
first week in September. Yeah.
Awesome. And you just got like a ton of time to just go have fun.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's gonna be
Cool.
cool. Like you said, just like spending time in the middle. It's gonna be nice to be able to do that for a bit. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm already enjoying it. Right now, I'm spending a little bit more time on the strength side of things, just because it's kind of cold and nasty out, and I don't feel like getting out
Yeah.
as much. And so
Mhm.
that's also been fun to just like try and get strong and jacked. So I've been
You're like, okay,
working with that. Yeah,
hypertrophy, strength, and
exactly.
then, power and speed. Those are two things you can build kind of within
Hmm.
the same on a treadmill inside.
Absolutely.
Um,
And the things I
yeah.
need to build.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And then, going into, I know that you offer hybrid programs and you do coaching.
Mhm.
Um, what's your favorite type of athlete to coach? Do you have one, or do you just kind of like, working with people that like doing stuff?
I mean, obviously, like it's always cool to have someone come in and to like have a big goal that's like scary for them. You know what I mean? And maybe they're having a little self doubt, and to be able to kind of, walk them through that and help them see it through. I think
Hmm.
that's always a lot of fun, where someone comes in and they don't know if they can do it, and that's maybe why they're reaching out in the first place. And then watching them, see all their hard work come to fruition. I think that's like the most rewarding thing as a coach, for
Yeah.
sure. And just like people who really want what they say they want. I think, obviously, like it's one of the hardest things as a coach is, getting buy-in, and getting people to be consistent with things, and, trust the process and whatever else. And so it's always, and that's part of being a coach, and that's a challenge of it, and that's cool, and I enjoy that. But it's also a lot of fun when you have someone who comes in and is just like willing to just be like, do whatever, like I trust you
Yeah.
completely, like I don't need to ask any questions, whatever you say
Hmm.
goes. It's like it's fun to be able to do that as well.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's difficult too. I think in the world with so many options and like
Mm.
so much, I don't want to say glory, but there's a lot of personal satisfaction that comes from obtaining a goal. But I think sometimes people choose goals not because they're actually excited by it, like you said at the beginning of the podcast. Like there's this visceral excitement
Mm-hmm.
that comes with choosing a goal that scares you a little bit, but that you're really excited about.
Mm-hmm.
um, I think sometimes, and this is not their fault, I think people think that it feels like being afraid,
Yeah.
and they just pick something that scares them,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't like the training and they don't like doing it, and that's perfectly valid. But
Totally.
walking them through that realization of being like, I know you said you really want to run a marathon to prove to yourself that you can do it, but we can't get you to run 13 miles.
Hmm.
So, like, maybe we should back this down to a half or look at bicycling or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
that can be it's cool when you succeed and you help them find something really fun.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that process can almost be like extremely difficult as a coach because you're like, I really want to get you to your goal. Like, I really do, but you hate it here.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
you hate it here.
Yeah. And it's so funny. I literally just had this conversation with someone the other day, a client, talking about how he wanted to potentially, he's looking into like a half marathon. And
Uh-huh.
this is something I do like anytime someone comes to me, especially existing clients who you've got like that really good rapport with, and you're
Yeah.
able to just be like blunt and like upfront about it. It's like, okay, man, like, yeah, I think that'd be really cool. Like, I think you could absolutely do it and we could get you there for sure. But like, I just want to be honest with you with what training would look like for this. Like, do you want to be spending this amount of time running each week? This is going to be kind of like a prep during like shitty weather. So you're either going to be spending time on a treadmill probably, or you're going to be running when it's cold out. And like, I'm sure to some people, it seems like maybe you're trying to like dissuade them or, talk them
Yeah.
out of it. And maybe to a certain extent, you are a little bit, but it's just like, I just, it's important to be honest with them. And, like
Mhm.
you said, maybe
Or
you don't
like,
really want it. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You
I
do
think
not
that's
need
yeah,
to run a half marathon. Do whatever you
right.
want.
Yeah, like that doesn't if it doesn't actually excite you and it just feels arbitrary,
Hmm.
you don't have to do it.
Hmm.
You can quit at any time and it means nothing
I
as
love
long as
this.
you keep doing
Yeah.
the stuff that's important to you and you keep
Mhm.
doing the stuff that makes you feel alive, like whatever that is. Or like in his case, maybe it's like maybe he doesn't have to run the half marathon that he's got his sights on. Maybe let's
Mhm.
push it to
Yeah.
like September so he can
Mhm.
prep through the summer or something like that, where it's like
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
compromise.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like this is going to make you hate running, but I think you have the potential to be really freaking good at it.
Right.
So, how can we set you up so that you actually like it here?
Hmm. No, totally. Yeah. Yeah, I think you put it perfectly. People kind of just like see this thing and they just want to do it just because, and that's okay. And it's like cool. Like you'll probably get some sort of satisfaction out of it once you're done. But I think like you said, just like understanding it's okay to not want to do that stuff too.
Hmm.
Like you don't have to do any of this. You can just
No.
do whatever excites you. There's no
Yeah,
rules when it comes to this stuff. So
exactly. I've had people be like, "Well, I don't think you'd want to work with me because like I don't do ultras or anything." And I'm like, "You don't even have to run.
yeah,
You can
I
just
could,
ride
yeah.
your air dyne after the gym. Like
Uh-huh.
I don't care."
No, that's great. And it's unfortunate that people feel that way, and I don't know where that comes from. But it's refreshing anytime you hear someone else like like I think you the whole CHP team. I've got respect for all you guys. I think you're all great, and so
Thank you.
just like being yeah, just like having those candid conversations and just being like you said, it doesn't matter. You don't have to do something you don't want to do.
Yeah. Like, yeah, there's something to the sort of go one more mentality, 100%.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think it needs to be done on a track
Right.
to be valid. I don't think it needs to be done during a race to be valid.
Hmm.
Um, I think it can be found literally anywhere.
Hmm.
And your mental health is just as important as your physical health.
Yeah.
So if
Absolutely.
you're truly miserable,
Yeah, this should be fun. I think people
yeah.
forget about that. Training should be enjoyable most of the time. Like obviously maybe in the moment things suck or whatever and that's fine, but if you're like looking back at the end of each training session and just like feeling completely spent, not like having any kind of like pulling any kind of joy out of it, then you're doing it wrong.
Hmm.
It's
And
not
get some
how
help. Like,
yeah,
hire a coach. Be like, yo,
exactly.
I'm doing my training this way and I hate it. Maybe you're just not a straight sets person. Maybe you're an
Right.
EMOM person.
Hmm.
Like,
Yep.
maybe you're a cluster set. Maybe, like, who knows?
Yeah. And it's
Something's gonna click.
totally. And then once you make that change and you find something that you really enjoy, that's when you're going to start making the best progress too. As soon
Hmm.
as you start finding something that you like and you find a style of training that you enjoy and you look forward to, you're going to get infinitely better than what you would if you were just banging your head against the wall every day doing shit you hate.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that should be like carved on a wall.
Mhm. There's a
Carve
wall
it
behind
on.
you. Put your money where your mouth is. Let's do it.
Yeah. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to your point, you should be having fun. I always like bringing up athletes too that are clearly having so much fun, like
Mhm.
Courtney Dauwalter,
Oh
Keelan
yeah.
Jornet. These are ultra endurance athletes. But then you go on the strength side, and you've got, oh gosh, Martin. How do you say his last name? The guy who, the strong man, Lisick,
I don't know. It seems like they all have a lot of fun.
right?
Like they're
They're
all like
just
have this banter and stuff. Like they're talking
they're
shit to each
having
other.
a
Like
blast.
yeah.
Yeah, and they're doing things that are objectively painfully difficult.
Oh
Like
yeah.
ultra endurance, strongman, both sides. It hurts. This
Hmm.
stuff hurts real bad. Risk of injury is super high. Like it's not a casual
Mm-mm.
thing to be highly competitive in these sports.
Right.
Um, but they're having a blast, and that's why they're still in it and they're still doing it. And if these people get injured, they're gonna still have fun doing something else.
Mhm.
So it's like, whatever you're pursuing, you don't even have to be thinking competitively, but just make sure that you're having a somewhat halfway decent time. Like
Yep.
if you don't like running, don't run. Go for a hike. Take your
Mhm.
dog for an extra walk. Like
Mhm.
do it. It's fine.
I know.
It's
Yeah.
totally
No,
fine.
I love this. I couldn't agree more.
I'll carve it in a wall and I'll send you a picture. Or I'll get it engraved on a sword.
Sick. That'd be dope. The sword is super cool, by the way.
Okay, cool. I remember thinking I was like Googling trophies for the Crucible winners. And I was just like, these are lame.
Yeah. They've got a
Like,
million of these. Like, yeah. Just another trophy. Like,
these are lame. Like,
mhm.
but imagine having a really huge glorified letter opener.
I know. I think it would. I don't even know if you could use it to open letters. It would be like you like the angle you have to pull your arm back to be able to like get it,
Every
especially
time an Amazon
next to
package
next
comes in.
arms. Like it wouldn't be happening. But
Yeah.
it's really cool.
Okay, awesome. I'm glad that you like it.
Yeah.
Um, all right, awesome. Well, it's been great chatting with you. Time has flown by.
Hmm.
I feel like we've kind of covered. Usually, my last question is like, what could you convey to people that you think is really important for coaching? And I feel like we just kind of talked about that. But
Yeah.
is there anything else that brings to mind that we didn't touch on, or do you feel like that would kind of summarize your answer to that question?
I mean, I feel like we pretty much covered it all. Like we said a million times, just like beat a dead horse. Like just make sure you're having fun with this. If you're listening to this, you're probably not like I mean, no disrespect, but they're probably not like training for the Olympics or like going to be like winning, like super high level professional basketball or anything like that. And
Completely
so
understand. Yeah.
if if you're listening to this, like this should be like an enjoyable thing. It's not your livelihood. Like
Mhm.
have fun with it. We've got a short amount of time, so make the most of it.
Yeah. You're gonna push yourself. Like enjoy it.
Mhm.
It shouldn't be like the monk, in the downstairs who's like whipping himself.
Yeah,
Like,
the
no,
yeah self
please don't
induced.
do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah.
Please don't do that.
Maybe sometimes it's some type 2 fun. You look back after the fact and you realize it was a lot of fun, and that's
Hmm.
okay too. Um, so I don't know.
No. Cool. If people want to follow you on Instagram, where can they go?
Clay Fost Fitness on Instagram. I'm on YouTube there as well. All the links to coaching, and I did just drop a new program. It's called Hybrid Meathead, and so it's similar to kind of how I've been training lately. It's this. I think it's more structured for if you're a strength athlete just wanting to dip your toes into some conditioning and endurance stuff. You're
Hmm.
going to find it like a seamless transition, or if you're a hybrid athlete and you're wanting to maybe spend a little bit more time focusing on some strength in the off season right now when it's cold and you're like me and you don't want to spend as much time outside doing that kind of stuff, this is a great way to spend some time building that other end of the spectrum. So
Perfect. I really enjoyed the use of the word meathead. That
yeah.
in and of itself has told me. Uh,
Yeah.
well, sweet. Well, thank you, Clay.
Yeah.
It's just been awesome having you on. Thanks for always being a part of CHP. Again, congratulations on your Crucible win. And I am stoked to see you at Rally.
Yeah, I'm excited to see you as well. Thanks again for having me, and thanks to like I said, the whole CHP team. You guys put out great stuff, so I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, friends, I will see you next podcast.